Hello, I'm Jimin from We Learn to Share, and in today's video, I'll be summarizing the second part of Unit 4 in AP Human Geography. To continue from the previous video of Unit 4, I will now talk about the different formations of boundaries. A border can be considered as a defined border when boundaries are established by a legal document. A border can also be considered as a delimited boundary when boundaries are drawn on the map. Sometimes a border would be considered as a demarcated boundary when it is marked to show that the boundary exists. For example, there may be fences or walls that are placed to show that the boundary exists. Lastly, a border can be considered as an administrative boundary when it is monitored by the government. There are sometimes disagreements based on these boundaries. These boundary disagreements can be categorized into definitional, locational, operational, and allocational. A definitional boundary disagreement is when countries disagree based on the wording in the original document of where the boundary was established. A locational boundary is a disagreement when countries do not agree on the boundary based on the location of the border. This usually occurs when physical boundaries have changed over time. Operational boundary disagreements is when countries disagree on how the boundary should function. For example, countries may disagree on how many people should be able to cross the border when it comes to immigrants and refugees, and in some cases, which goods and services should cross the border when it comes to trade between countries. An allocational boundary disagreement is when countries disagree on the rights to resources in the border region. These boundaries have effects on shatter belts and choke points. Shatter belts are regions located between an area that has been fought over by political, economic, and cultural forces. These would be locations where there have been historical conflicts or even regions where people are currently fighting over right now. An example of a shatter belt is the South China Sea. This is because the South China Sea is a region where people are fighting for political, economic, and cultural reasons. Choke points, on the other hand, is a geographic feature that is controlled by a country in which people must pass. These areas are significantly important, especially in war and trade. For example, the Strait of Malacca is an important choke point that connects the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean. This route supplies oil to China and Indonesia, which is the primary choke point in Asia. In addition to international boundaries, there are also boundaries within countries or independent states. A common type of internal boundary are voting districts. These boundaries would divide people into different districts for voting purposes. In order to make sure that each district has approximately the same number of people, a process called redistricting takes place that follows the census with official data of the population. Sometimes these voting districts can be manipulated for political advantages. The process of gerrymandering is when political boundaries are drawn in order to have political gains. The two common types of gerrymandering strategies are packing and cracking. Packing is done by putting people who vote for one party into one single district so that it wins the other districts. On the other hand, cracking spreads out people who are willing to vote for a certain party so that they become the minority in every district. There are two forms of governance, which are unitary and federal. A unitary government is when power is centralized at the highest level of the government. This means that laws created by the central government could affect everyone, and today the majority of countries with fewer nations in the country have a unitary government. Some pros of using a unitary government is that since the power is centralized to the highest level of the government, it can be considered as more efficient and easy to run. However, problems with this type of governance would be that the negative decisions of the central government could possibly impact the entire country and that local issues in the region of the country could be ignored. A federal government is when power is divided between national government and the subnational forms of government. This means that the national government would control some areas of the country while smaller forms of governments would impact other regions of the country. A federal government is usually used in countries with multiple nations known as multinational states or countries with larger land masses. Some pros of using a federal government would be that since power is dispersed between governments, there are more opportunities for people to get involved in political processes, and regions of the country could make laws that would be efficiently applied for that certain region. However, it could possibly lead to disunity and become disorganized. What is devolution? Devolution is the transfer of political power from the central government to subnational levels of government within an independent state. This can lead to the creation of federal units, autonomous regions, and new states. There are several reasons for devolution to occur. Devolution can occur for physical reasons. When people are separated by physical geography, some people may feel isolated from the rest of the country. Cultural and ethnic differences can also be a reason for devolution. Due to significant differences in language or religion, power could be transferred to smaller forms of government. Some devolution could occur due to economic differences within an independent state. Economic inequality can lead to some people feeling disconnected from the state, while wealthy people may feel like they do not need the state. Additionally, disagreements over natural resources within a country could also lead to devolution. Irredentism, which is the movement to unite people with similar cultural elements that are part of two different countries, can be another reason for devolution. For instance, this could occur when a part of a country wants to leave in order to join another independent state. Lastly, violence in a country could cause devolution. Violence such as terrorism, which is violence against civilians for a political purpose, and forced removal of an ethnic group by death, known as ethnic cleansing, may lead to devolution. What is supranationalism? Supranationalism is the process of states forming an organization for political, economic, or environmental purposes. For example, United Nations is a form of supranationalism, as it is an organization wherein many states around the world are involved to deal with political, economic, and environmental issues. What are the consequences of centrifugal and centripetal forces? Centripetal forces are forces that unite people, while centrifugal forces divide people. Centrifugal forces could be unjust laws, inefficient government, and inequality within a country. These factors can divide people and lead to ethno-nationalism, which is the feeling of loyalty towards one's ethnic group rather than the state. Or in extreme cases, it could lead to a failed state, in which a state has failed to have an organized government to the point where it can no longer function. Some examples of centripetal forces within a country could be just laws, economic growth, and efficient government, which are factors that will help bring people within a country together. This may result in nationalism, which is the process of forming a nation around the borders of the state. This will be the end of today's video, and I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.